So third places, it was a term coined, I want to say maybe 70-ish years ago now. And the idea was your first place is your home, your second place is your work, and then your third place is where you go for everything else. So mainly for the purpose of socialization. They were coffee shops, they were arcades, bowling alleys is a really big one. And they were places where people could go for little to no monetary contribution and just have a good time and connect with people outside of their normal social circle. And that's a huge part about it. And these places, often you find they're critical for a lot of reasons, mainly because they allow people from all socioeconomic backgrounds to all stay in one spot and have a good time and understand each other. And that's really the big thing, the understanding that you get from socializing with these people in a group. And what we found in our research is that these places are dying out.
Hello, and welcome back to the Be Unbound podcast. I'm your co-host, David Rethemeyer.
So third places, it was a term coined, I want to say maybe 70-ish years ago now. And the idea was your first place is your home, your second place is your work, and then your third place is where you go for everything else. So mainly for the purpose of socialization. And so what I found in my research is that these places, like even as close back as 20 years ago, they were coffee shops, they were arcades, bowling alleys is a really big one. And they were places where people could go for little to no monetary contribution and just have a good time and connect with people outside of their normal social circle. And that's a huge part about it. And these places, often you find they're critical for a lot of reasons to a functioning society, really, mainly because they allow people from all socioeconomic backgrounds to all stay in one spot and have a good time and understand each other. And that's really the big thing, the understanding that you get from socializing with these people in a group. And what we found in our research is that these places are dying out. And like arcades are a thing of the past, bowling alleys, they're slowly disappearing.
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brush.
And this week's episode, we have some guests back on the podcast who you almost definitely have not heard of. They have no claims to fame, at least as of yet. But this is a group of students who have produced something that I think is going to be pretty amazing and I think is worth your time. So, Jonathan, tell our listeners a little bit more about what they can expect.
Yeah, this is a super fun interview. These are some really, really cool people and some really cool students. In fact, they're so cool they ought to be Unbound students, but they're not. They go to the Acton School. They had some association with us because they did some Navigate course. Some of them took the Navigate course that we offer. And because of that, they found my name. And they were shooting a documentary called The Age of Isolation, and it's about loneliness and connectivity. And they asked me to, if they could interview me for the documentary, which of course I was surprised and delighted to do. And so that was a really fun interview. They did an excellent job. And now they're just about, probably by the time this podcast is released, they will have had their live screening. And we'll give you the website and the place to find the documentary in the podcast interview. We get to talk to 3 of the 12 students who worked on this. They have a really cool story about how they came about to do this, what they learned as they went through it, and then just some really interesting stuff they learned about the content of the documentary, about isolation and connectivity. And this was fun. We had a great time with this group. Mm-hmm. You should absolutely check out the documentary and watch it. And you should keep an eye open because I suspect there might be more coming. Well, Logan, Blake, and Elizabeth, we're delighted to have you on the Be Unbound podcast. The background here is that several months ago, you guys reached out to me and asked to let me be interviewed for a documentary you're working on called Age of Isolation. And that was the first time I had really met you. And so we had a really fun interview, and then I was really intrigued by the project. And then we've kind of kept a little bit of an eye on how things have gone since then. And I'm really interested to share with our audience what you've done and also maybe give them a chance to eventually see the documentary. So let's start with you guys introducing yourselves. So Logan, if you'd start, and then Blake and Elizabeth, tell us a little bit tell us your full name and how you got involved with this project.
Yeah, so I'm Logan Zorek. My mom founded the school that we all go to, and I was involved in the project. I interviewed a few people. I went out on the field with Blake. So I was really collaborating very closely with Blake and everyone else on this project.
Awesome. And Logan was the one that did the interview when I was interviewed. So, okay, Blake, so you told me you were a big time on the editing side, but what else got you involved here?
Yeah, so my name is Blake. I just graduated as a senior. So one thing about our high school is we're kind of all throughout the span of high school. So I graduated my senior year, you're a junior, and you're a junior going into senior year. But as far as the documentary goes, I did a lot of the kind of project management, overarching story, and then the production and the editing side. So all the technical stuff, all of the kind of overarching story stuff I did. And then I was coordinating with Logan and Lizzie about interviewing people, about going out, about getting the shots. So I was kind of the kind of overarching story throughout the whole thing.
That was right. It was really his senior project, really.
Yeah.
The second semester when we really were like locked in on it, and he was the one that he was like the boss, not the boss of everything, but he managed everyone, and if you had a question about anything related to documentary stuff, he was the person to walk up to and ask.
And so, Elizabeth, I heard you referred to as Lizzie a couple of times. So what is it what do you go by?
Either one's fine. Most people call me Lizzie, but
Okay. So tell us your involvement with the project here.
so yeah, I'm Lizzie, and I did a lot of like filler things, kind of. I hopped around a bunch, but my main focus was I did a lot of street interviews, so I'd go out with a couple people and just interview people from churches or coffee shops and stuff like that. And then I also worked a little bit with the social media team.
Awesome. And you said you guys were a group of about 12 that put the whole project together. Is that right?
Yep.
So project-based education. So Blake, you were the one that kind of came up with the idea. Were you the one that came up with the idea in terms of the theme, like doing it about loneliness and isolation?
No. So how that happened is our main teacher, we call them guides because they kind of guide us through and don't answer questions, but kind of teach us how to answer the questions ourselves. Our main guide came to us and said, hey guys, this is a really interesting topic, loneliness and connection. I think it'd be awesome this year if we looked more into it and researched it. So we all chose a different topic, gave a presentation, and we realized this topic, there's so much more to it than what we can cover here. We should make this a longer, bigger project this year. So we came with the documentary. We planned for weeks and weeks, and we're like, what are we really going to do this on? Because connection is just kind of connection, right? It's like, what does that mean? So we dove into it. We were like, what can we really pinpoint here, and what can we really create this documentary about? And then we settled on the age of isolation and how connection has changed over the last 15 to 20 years and what's really gone into that.
So before we get to that, which is a really fascinating topic, we want to kind of cover that a little bit more. But did you have any background? Had any of you done any filmmaking before? Was this all like a brand new figured out, or did some of you have some background and sort of applied those skills to this project?
So for me, I've been doing filmmaking and like film production for a while, but I've never done anything in terms of documentary. Like making a documentary, completely different skill set than what I do, which is like 15 to 20-second advertisements. So going into the project, I was like, what am I doing here? I have no idea what's happening. And it's really funny because as you watch it, you can kind of see like from a critical eye, you can be like, hey, this is getting better throughout. And it's really interesting to go back and kind of visualize my growth in filmmaking as I'm able to watch and reflect.
And Logan and Lizzie, did you guys have backgrounds in that at all, or?
No, we have a process at Acton that comes from the highest level. It's called Stars and Stepping Stones interviews. And so what that entails is you find someone in the field you want to go into, you reach out to them, and you interview them, and you learn about that whole process. So that was the only experience that I had really had with anything related to documentary, for interviewing people in a documentary specifically. That was the only experience I had. As far as like camera work and like saying things well to a camera, that was something that was very new for me. I'm sure Blake, when he was filming me, I had to say things over and over and over again. So yeah, as far as the experience with this interviewing, that was the only thing that I really had.
Basically the same thing as Logan. I only really had experience with interviewing people. Blake did all basically the camera stuff and all that jazz because I have no idea. But yeah, I was mostly just interviewing and then like coordinating things and how the documentary was going to run, like in terms of what we're going to put in it, but nothing like production. I had no experience with that.
We also did a lot of the narration. So a lot of the clips where we have us kind of reflecting on what our interviewers were saying, you did a majority of that.
Yeah.
So what were the most surprising things that you learned? I mean, like, obviously you learned a lot, and you talked about it, like you can sort of see the progression and all that stuff, but what were some things that stood out to each of you? It's like, well, I didn't ever see that coming. Logan, you applied almost a little bit with the whole, learn to speak on camera was a new skill, but what were some things that were surprising?
We had a script that we had all collaborated and written out on, and it was like a few paragraphs. And I learned just how hard it is to memorize something like that. Like you see these news anchors and people on TV or even on the internet, they'll do like all the time. And it's just, it's perfect, right? And I didn't realize how hard that was, especially the memorization of it. Like in the video, in the raw footage of the interviews, it's just of me saying things to the camera. It's just me like saying the line, thinking of my head, and then trying to repeat it back. And then to do that all at once, it's unbelievable. And especially to cover like little mistakes. because there's some parts in the footage where you can kind of see where there might be some cuts. Like trying to get that all into one, like it's really an art, to be honest. That's what I learned. The presentation of it, making sure your words come across. Like you can say anything, make sure your words come across the right way. That was super fascinating.
I don't know if you guys ever had this experience, but yeah, so David and I would do podcasts, we speak, we do these things. And so it's kind of like, it's kind of our day job, right? And then there's an author named Andy Andrews, and he's actually been a guest on the podcast, and I've been in his podcast, and we've done some courses with him. And we went to his studio. First of all, we thought we had cool equipment. We're like not even T-ball. Like, we're like stick ball in the backyard compared to the studios. And then we had content written for him, and Logan, it was amazing. Like he hit it, and like the modulation, the timing, the everything, like first take was better than anything. Even David, who has the best radio voice ever, even is the best thing that any of us ever done. He just did it effortlessly for like 3 hours, like just did all of it. And it was unbelievable. And Logan, to your point, like if you've ever tried it, it's like one of those things that like, gymnastics looks really cool. If you've actually been a gymnast, it's even absolutely insane what it's like top level people do. And this is the same thing. It was like, it is really a skill, and it's a lot. It looks so easy, and it's so much harder than you'd think. So,
but to your credit, most of those people do have very expensive teleprompters that are helping them out a lot. And it sounds like you guys didn't quite have that.
Not quite.
It's called the old-fashioned way, do the real work. So
Exactly.
Blake and Lizzie, what were some of the things that were surprising for you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think I was mostly looking at the documentary from the production point of view. I think the biggest thing is just how long editing takes, because the timeline kept getting
Amen.
short, because I couldn't give like a good estimate. I gave one, I was like, it'll be done in a week. And then a week later, I'm like 20% there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I put in like 40 hours this week. It's not even fun. And so just the giving accurate time estimates and how long editing takes for a big project like that just blew my mind.
I cannot speak from personal experience, but if you haven't noticed by the moans over here, David can speak from personal experience. And yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, most of my editing is mostly just like promo videos and just courses for stuff that we do here at Unbound, but doing a full-on documentary and the amount of detail that goes into that, I can only imagine how long that must take. So hats off to you, sir.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
We have students who shot a short film not that long ago, and we have a shot of them finishing up, and the main editor is like, he's been up all night, and he just goes, when he has this sigh, and he says, I'm almost done. And it's just like, it comes through the camera, like you feel so much more. You can just see the exhaustion. He's been up all night trying to put this thing together. So yeah, I think there's lots of people who are listening, Blake, who completely can relate to the editing woes that you're going through there. So Lizzie, how about you?
For me, I didn't realize how much went into making like a camera angle look good, because I figured like, oh, you set up the camera, like it'll look fine. And then Blake comes in and brings like all these lighting things. He's got like all these microphones, and I was like I didn't realize how much actually went into just like lighting and cameras and the mics and like all the different lenses and everything. That was kind of fascinating to me, because I figured like, oh, we'll just use our phone or whatever, but no.
Well, I want to get into the subject matter here. I think this is the part that's really interesting. Before we do that, though, you said you're going to have a live screening here coming up in just a couple of days from when we're recording this. So that's really exciting. After that, will there be a place that people can find the film and actually go look at it? Because we'd definitely like to promote that if there's a place that we can send people.
100%. We'll upload it to YouTube, and then we'll probably also stream it on a few other platforms, potentially like X, maybe some snippets on Instagram. But we'll email you guys a YouTube link if you want to push that out to the audience.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely will. And we'd love to send that out to folks. So just for people listening, it's going to be called Age of Isolation. And do you know what account it's going to be under? So, like, if you can put that in the account into YouTube, we'll have the link. But just in case people are listening to this and want to look it up later.
So it'll be under the Connection Project. So that's the name of the brand we're building.
Excellent.
And then the Age of Isolation is the documentary, our first big project.
And the great place to find everything is our website is theconnectionproject.us. And that is mission statements, and it has all our social media linked. So if that's like a centralized place where everything can be found.
Theconnectionproject.us, is that correct, Logan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so if you're listening to this, just start with this. You should go watch it, and so that's how you can find it. Now, we're not going to give away the whole thing here, but we want to start. So tell us a little bit about what you discovered. What were some of the things that, you obviously learned about making the documentary, but Logan, you said it was kind of your mom's idea. For each of you, what was the part that made you interested in doing this project? What was the part that was like, yeah, that's something I want to lean to? Like you said, you had a guide, sort of, had the idea, and you wanted to focus on it. But tell us a little bit about the genesis of all that.
For sure. And so I mentioned how we all kind of chose a subject, all 12 of us, and then we gave a little 5-minute presentation about here's what I learned. And so how we laid out the documentary is we have three big sections that are like the biggest contributors to what loneliness is today. So those were COVID, the loss of third places, and then social media. And I think the biggest thing for me just going into it was seeing how so many different things can come together and just contribute to one big problem. So it's not like one singular cause. It's like 15 different things just all coming together, contributing little bits and pieces, but then they're all kind of equally putting us to where we are today, kind of disconnected compared to 20 years ago.
Yeah. So COVID, lack of third places, and social media. So I think that, COVID, people would say, yeah, I understand how it works. And social media to some extent, they might, I suspect they don't realize the depth of what's happening, but they understand that it's an issue. But the one in the middle is pretty interesting to me. So tell me a little bit about this lack of third spaces. What prompted that angle, and what did you learn about that?
Yeah, so that was from my research, because we all researched individually these ideas that Blake mentioned, then we brought them to the group. So third places, it was a term coined, I want to say maybe 70-ish years ago now. And the idea was your first place is your home, your second place is your work, and then your third place is where you go for everything else. So mainly for the purpose of socialization. And so what I found in my research is that these places, like even as close back as 20 years ago, they were coffee shops, they were arcades, bowling alleys is a really big one. And they were places where people could go for little to no monetary contribution and just have a good time and connect with people outside of their normal social circle. And that's a huge part about it. And these places, often you find they're critical for a lot of reasons to a functioning society, really, mainly because they allow people from all socioeconomic backgrounds to all stay in one spot and have a good time and understand each other. And that's really the big thing, the understanding that you get from socializing with these people in a group. And what we found in our research is that these places are dying out. And like arcades are a thing of the past, bowling alleys, they're slowly disappearing.
Movie theaters even, right? So
That's right. They used to be huge. I was just talking to someone at my local community center the other day, and it was like, yeah, are you going to the movies tonight? I never hear about, she's older. She's like, I never hear about anyone doing that anymore. Like she said when she was younger, that's what they do. Like every Friday, go on the movies with your friends. And so what we found is I had a really interesting conversation with my friend a few days ago. We were going out somewhere, and he's a freshman in college, so it's just a year older than Blake. And he was like, where are people our age? Like, where are they? Because we've gone to all these places together. We've gone to like trampoline parks. We've gone to beaches, and there's no people our age anywhere anymore. And that's really the effect that third places have had on us. We just can't find people our age anymore. And it's really a sad thing because I feel like people who have never experienced third place don't realize the importance of it. And that's something that's really sad. And people try to translate it into the digital world, which is something I'm sure we can talk about later, but it just doesn't give you the same connection, because that's one of the requirements of third place. It has to be in person, not a lot of money to contribute, and it has to allow people from all backgrounds to contribute.
So for you personally, did that ring true? Like, do you have third places where you live?
The biggest third place I have is just down the street from me, and so that's one of the qualifications. It's easy to get to. There's a local gym, and it's a small gym. It's not a very big room, but all these people from the local community, they'll go there and they'll all talk. And as I've gone there for the past few years, I mean, one, you go to exercise, but two, one of the main reasons I still go there is because since the gym isn't that big, doesn't have everything that you need, is the people there. And I will go and I'll find myself in like 30, 45-minute conversation with people after I'm done working out, or even before I work out. And all these, and it's just a great time. And that's really the only third place I have. But the trick is there's not a lot of people my age there. They're all older at this community center. And so, and still, yeah, I've found so much value in that, and I've learned so many lessons from that. But I would say that's really the only third place that I have right now.
Blake and Lindsay, how about you guys? Do you have third places?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any places I go to that fit all three qualifications, which is like the big issue. I think like the places I do go, the gym, it's not super easy to get to. I have to drive like 20, 30 minutes to get there. I mean, like where I work out, where I walk, where I shop, these are all places that I have, but they're not necessarily cheap. So I feel like we have a lot of places that we go to, but none of them fit the traditional standard of a third place anymore. Mm-hmm. And places like bowling alleys, arcades, movie theaters, like we talked about, are all dying out. And so I think like the third place is when Logan presented that day, I was like, that is really cool. We need to have that in the documentary. Mm-hmm. And that's my personal favorite part.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Lizzie, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Blake. I would like to say that I do, and I wish I did. But I feel like almost everywhere I go nowadays is like, I'll go get food, I'll go get fast food or like whatever, I'll go to coffee shops. And it's like, I go get my stuff and then I like leave and that's it. And I like keep to myself and just do what I was there to do. And I don't really socialize with people. So I wish I could say that I did have third places, but I feel like not nowadays, not really. I just stick to myself, or if I'm with someone, to like my friend group, and that's about it.
Did you ever read Alex de Tocqueville? He was a Revolutionary War kind of era writer, and he was French, and so he came over to tour the United States. I say Revolutionary War, it'd been like late 1700s, I think early 1800s. I'll have to double check the timing on that, but obviously early colonial America. And he has these really interesting observations of America, and one of them is he said America is made up of people who are joiners. So in other words, they create spaces, they create bowling alleys and bowling leagues, and so he said there's this intermediating institutions. So there's the government, and then there's all these other things that create all these services for people that the communities put together themselves. And from his perspective, that was very unique. It was very different from the Europe that he was used to. And it made America really, really interesting in terms of their independence and freedom. And so I think there's a lot of commentators now who look at that and say, those are dying rapidly. There's a famous book called Bowling Alone that kind of references the fact that you've lost those things. So I think that's really interesting that you found that in the documentary. So I think I said earlier, I think people can understand COVID and social media, but I think that there's a lack of depth of understanding of social media. So I'm really intrigued from you guys' perspective. You know, most people would say you're native social media users, right? You've grown up in a world that social media is kind of dominated. So what were some surprising things that you discovered in your research about social media for this documentary?
Yeah, so I personally did a lot of social media research. I think it was so interesting to me because I feel like we're the first generation who's grown up where like everyone has a phone and like now everyone goes and plays video games and that's like a normal thing. But I still remember like being a kid and going outside and running around with the neighbors and like, so for me it was really interesting to do the research on that. I think it's surprising to me that I feel like people have a understanding that it's bad for you, but they don't care enough to want to give it up because it's a very addicting thing. And I just think the fact that everyone like knows that everyone knows that it's bad and everyone is struggling with the problem, but we still haven't done anything to fix it. It was kind of intriguing to me. And the fact that it's supposed to be a tool that's trying to connect people and like bring people together, but it actually most of the time does the opposite. Like people are less connected in the real world and more connected online.
Yeah, the whole kind of, you have 1,000 friends, but only 2 people you can talk to or something like that.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that pretty much everybody is aware of the fact that it's a problem. I read a statistic the other day that was somewhere in the neighborhood of a third or more of high schoolers in 2025 would be interested in a dumb phone where they didn't have access to social media and they weren't cut off from those things. But when you ask like how many of them like would actually buy it for themselves, then I think it was less than 2%. And so it's just interesting how there is such a recognition of, yeah, this is a problem, but the actual willingness to do something about it is so low. And I would be very curious if you guys have any thoughts on why that might be.
Well, I think I know one of the issues is when I've just talked with people my age before is I know a lot of people who'd be willing to give it up, but it's because we know that other people won't give it up and everyone else still has social media. And then it's like, oh, now I'm missing out if only I give it up. So it's like you got to be like an all or nothing. Either everyone goes out or we all stay on it just for the fear of missing out and having the FOMO of like, oh, but they have it.
We have a third place here, which is a local kind of coffee shop, deli place that a lot of our staff hang out. A lot of our families and local people are there. And it was interesting, Logan, as I was listening to your definition, I was like, oh, yeah, this place probably qualifies as a third place. And I was talking to the owner of that this morning, and one of his workers had just gone to a Young Life camp, and there was 800 people there. And it was interesting. He said she led with this, and it was great. They made us give up our phones at the beginning of the week, and I really didn't want to get it back at the end. And it was really fascinating. This is a high school, college-age student, but to your point, Lizzie, it was the fact that everybody gave them up. You know, like they were in this entire environment where nobody had a phone. And that was the part that made it particularly attractive. I thought it was an interesting statement that, you know, she was sorry to regain it at the end of the week, which is kind of interesting. Logan, how about you, or Blake, in terms of the social media aspect of it? Lacey, that was really helpful. What were some surprising things that you guys discovered through that process?
Oh gosh, I will say, not to call you out a little bit, but one of the things you mentioned, how it's kind of a lot of people will only give it up because other people around them will keep it and stay informed and keep them informed. We have a few people at our school who don't have social media at all. And then Logan, you don't have like a couple of the popular social medias, like you don't have Instagram. You don't
no.
Yeah, and we were talking about this actually 20 minutes before this podcast. I was like, are you ever going to get Instagram? Like, it'd be so helpful with college, you know, that's like awesome. And what was your answer to that? Would you?
My answer was, I've seen it. I've seen the good uses for it. And I think that's I think that's part of the reason people hang on, is because they can use the good reasons to justify it. But I would say the main reason I'd be like, I've seen the applications for business. You know, social media gives you this amazing platform to go out and reach like millions, if not sometimes literally billions of people. And so if you harness the power of that in the proper way, I think it can be used for personal growth. But I've been so cautious with it personally. And I say that, and I still have YouTube, and I'm still in that sphere a little bit. But I've been more cautious of it because I know it can very easily be used as a double-edged sword. Even YouTube, I've seen how addicting that can get, and that's not even the most optimized one in terms of just like, you know, scrolling. And so since someone who I can be more obsessive with things, and so I know Blake's a similar way. So I've seen the ways it can be used for growth, and I've seen the ways it can be used for even more detriment. And so that's kind of why I've steered clear from it. But again, like I don't know, I can see, since I want to go into business, I can see that accelerating a business. And even like you know, the Unbound podcast, that's not possible without social media, right?
Can I build on something? Yeah,
you can.
You mentioned kind of just using it as a tool. That's, I think, what social media should be. And I think that's the hatred of social media, is that bridge between being used as a tool and being used just because you have it and you can use it. And I think everything between that is the hatred for it. Versus if it were only used as a tool, and a tool is a sense of just like, you know, reaching people for business applications, even as a tool, like even if you are recreationally using it to like share parts about your life and connect with people, if all the connections were meaningful and you actually took the time to build relationships with the people you're connecting with, I think social media would be loved by everyone, virtually everyone, versus now it kind of has that love-hate relationship. And I feel like everyone would be much better off with it, and we wouldn't have such a stigma around using it, and such a stigma around like having to give away our phones and put the phones down all the time. I feel like it would leave everyone in a better place.
There's an interesting aspect here with podcasts. You produce a podcast and you don't have an expectation that you get a lot of feedback, right? It's not necessarily a two-way street. But that does allow more room to try to craft the podcast well, to have interesting guests, to have good conversations, to produce it well, and all those kinds of things. There's no ambiguity. You're trying to produce something for production that you're going to release, sort of like a documentary, right? Social media is weird in that most people don't treat it that way. They treat it like a conversation, but it's actually not. It's more of a one-way conversation, but they're not really putting the time in to make it excellent, and they're not really thinking about why they're producing it. And so you get a lot of dead content, right? I mean, like content that doesn't really have any meaning to it. If you guys have a chance, since you're now filmmakers, you'll appreciate this. There's and you mentioned YouTube, Logan. There's a channel on YouTube called Fort9, and it's a motorcycle channel. I would just say, whether you have zero interest in motorcycles, it is, to my perspective, the best filmmaking on YouTube. It's really, really amazing. And something that has nothing to do with motorcycles is their latest video is called The Algorithm Wants You Dumb. And so if you just go to Fort9, and I don't know if that's exactly the title or if it's close to, but if you go to Fort9, look at their latest video, it's about the algorithm. And it is a fascinating look at two things. One, the commentary on what the algorithm does to people. The argument is it makes you boring and isolates you, and it explains the reason for that. Secondly, if you guys have now done some filmmaking, I won't spoil anything else, but I think he'll blow your mind with what he does in the 9 or 12 minutes that he shoots this. You'll look at it and you'll understand what happens in the first shot alone, and it'll probably be mind-blowing because you'll know what it took. Most people won't, but you guys just did that, so you understand now.
I wrote it down. I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, it should be really interesting. It'll be fun to come back and have another conversation about it, actually. But okay, so that leads to the last one, COVID. So again, you're in an interesting period. I mean, we all went through COVID, right? So we have that. But you guys went through COVID at a particularly pivotal time. So 5 years ago, that's like right before high school, right? Getting ready to go into high school. Obviously a pretty interesting time. And so how did that look to you guys from what you learned in the documentary?
Oh gosh. I think COVID was one of the things that we were really iffy about including because there's such like a stigma around like, do we really talk about it? It's been talked about so much these past few years.
Yeah, it's to the point where just about nobody actually wants to hear anything more about
Right.
COVID.
So we kept that section a lot shorter because we figured it's something that needs to be discussed, but it's something everybody has a pretty strong background about because we all lived through it. So what we discussed about COVID in it was just kind of how social isolation and the quarantines just affected our community and our connections. And we did some comparisons to how we connected beforehand because when discussing with people, we found out that a lot of people kind of forgot how we interacted with people around us before COVID because it's changed so much. Like, for example, I mean, you just went so many more places, so many less things were not online. Like, you didn't shop online all the time. You went into the stores and bought stuff. And through COVID, a lot of things have become more commerce based, e-commerce based, like online, and really just removing the connection and the people aspect out of things.
So here's the part that I'm most curious about. So you shot the documentary, you obviously increased your filmmaking skills, you learned a lot of things, but you are talking about a subject that's obviously directly relevant to you guys. And so what's different for you? Like, do you live differently or do you do different things based on what you learned with the documentary?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing, and going into the project, there's this guy I modeled some of the ending about. He has a YouTube channel called Yes Theory, and the entire idea is just say yes to things, go experience things, go do this. Like, you don't want to, but you're going to learn from it. You're going to have a great time. Just do it. And I think that's one thing that I've really been trying to incorporate in my life. Like, just go out, just do the thing. Even if you don't like it, even if you don't want to, you're going to learn from it. And if you didn't like it, you don't have to do it again, right? It's one day of your life, and it's an experience that'll teach you so much more from that. So I think from the documentary, my biggest takeaway has been just say yes to things. Just go do the thing. Go meet new people. Go have fun. Like, you live once. Just get all the experience you can. And especially while I'm young, just do everything, you know?
I was just thinking, and this came up. You were speaking about this in our interview, Mr. Brush. One thing that you mentioned that really has stuck with me is, or one of the things I should say, is this. You were talking about this group of lifelong friends that you've met and all the experiences you've built with them, and the importance of having shared experiences with one another that like challenge you. Like you mentioned, you go through grief with one another. You go through great victories with one another, and as I've made a lot of new friendships recently this past summer, and I've seen those friendships grow because of those shared experiences, and that's something I find so fascinating. And like I was mentioning my friend earlier, how we've been going out a bunch of different places this summer, and just the way that accelerates the connection that you build with someone else, I think is so fascinating to me. Like, whether it becomes an inside joke or just a passing thing, talking about like, oh, remember when this happened? And especially when it forces growth from one another and forces you to collaborate on something, like, you know, stuck in traffic for 45 minutes or something like that. It's just like little things like that. Just the importance of that to having a meaningful relationship with someone else is something that I really pulled away originally from the documentary and then I've got to experience in the past few months.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just had I talked about the Fort 9 being a motorcycle channel. That's because I'm interested in motorcycles. I just was on a backcountry motorcycle trip with some people. And it's interesting what experience can do just in terms of a connection. And it's interesting how it manifests itself. Came back and told my wife, I said, we had this really interesting time where we rode the last half of the day on really difficult trails when it was pouring down rain. And then we came into camp and it was pouring down rain. And so we set up our shelters. We kind of cooked our own individual meals. It rained all night. The next morning we got up, kind of set our things up and packed up and left. And I said, and here's the thing, like, we barely communicated, which was kind of an indication of the depth of the relationship, which is an odd thing to say, right? But like, words weren't necessary. We were enjoying experiencing this together, both the fun part of riding motorcycles and the misery of the fact that it was raining for the third day in a row. And then just getting up and doing all that. And there was no need to like have useless talk and stuff like that. We all knew what we had to do. We all knew the right timing. And then the first kind of communication we had is we set the map and figured out if we needed, to stop for gas before or after we left. And I told her, I said, it was really odd, but that kind of lack of talking only came with a relationship depth that had a lot of shared experience behind it. We'd gone through these things together enough that we knew exactly what each one needed to do. And I thought it was kind of a neat, aspect of relationships you don't always get to see unless you invest that time and effort to get those experiences. So Well, Lizzie, you get a chance to have the last word here. So what are some of the things you've done differently since the documentary?
I think pretty similar to what Blake said, just like going out and doing things, trying something new, even if you really don't want to. For instance, like my Boompa, which is my grandpa, is what I call him. I call him almost every day, and he's like, "So what are you doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, just chilling at home." And he's like, "No, go out and do something. Like go, like get in your car, go do something fun," which I think is because it's so tempting to just sit at home and scroll because you have basically everything right there on your phone. Like you could do, the possibilities are endless, and all you have to do is sit on your couch. So I think it's very important to just like go meet some new people, even if you really, really are not feeling social and don't want to talk to anybody, but just to go out, go to a coffee shop, go get food, go run around the park, like just go do something new and get out of your house. I think is super important. And I've been trying to do that more recently, especially this summer.
Well, guys, thanks so much. I was really impressed with your work when you did the interview. It was really fun to watch the whole thing progress and come to completion. And I hope you have a fantastic opening night, so to speak, and then lots of people come see it. So tell us again the website so everybody can go make sure they go there here at the end of the podcast.
It's theconnectionproject.us, and again, you can find a description of who we are. We've got our group photo on there. We have right now the trailers on the website, but eventually the whole thing will be on the website and right after the screening. And then also all of our social media and email are linked all down there at the very bottom of the website.
And the documentary is The Age of Isolation. And so definitely, if you're listening to this, check that out. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure talking to you guys, and we'll look forward to whatever comes next.
Of course. Thank you so much for the
Thank you for
opportunity.
having us,
Yeah,
yeah.
we really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. These were super awesome students. We're looking forward to whatever they're doing next. I know Blake is tells these off to college next year, and Logan and Lizzie are entering their senior year, which is a pretty intense year. So looking forward to being really busy. And it sounds like they probably won't be isolated at all.
Not by any means. Yeah. It's so cool to see young people like this really engage so critically with an issue that is just all too common among people their age. And I think these are some kids, like we talked about in the episode, that are not going to just be people who are aware of the issue and say, well, but everybody else is facing it, so, might as well just deal with it like everybody else. They're looking to do something about it and looking to make the everyday changes in the ordinary things that they do in their lives. And I think that they're going to end up being some pretty extraordinary young people as they enter adulthood. So I'm really excited to see where they go.
I agree. And if you've followed us this year, you know that, last year, Apex, the cabinet picked the theme, Live Deliberately. And so we've talked about that in various things throughout the year with the podcast and things we've done in Unbound. And these are students who really epitomize living deliberately. They have some real interesting drive and ambitions and abilities. And so tip of the hat to them for their work, to the school and the kinds of students that they're training. And this was super fun to be associated with them. Well, thank you for spending some time with us here again at the Be Unbound podcast. By the time this releases, we will be at the very last end of our recruiting season for Ascend, which means if you have not signed up for Ascend or Equip or Explore yet, you should stop everything you're doing, go to our website and get that scheduled right now. All joking aside, we're looking forward to this coming year. We have lots of exciting things going on. Our high school programs, as they normally do, have gone through some revisions as we've taken all things we've learned in all of our programs and written and adjusted curriculum to reflect those things. We have a new AI track that is part of the Ascend program. We're looking forward to all the events of Ascend after all the fun that we had last year. It's always great to see how students build on it. The cabinet, as we're recording this, is putting the finishing touches on Apex, which will happen pretty shortly after you listen to this. And so probably when you listen to this, we'll all have some butterflies in our stomachs as we're getting ready for Apex, which is always a really big event. Looking forward to being back in Michigan for that and all things that come with it. So if you're interested in all things Unbound, go to beunbound.us to check those out. But if you're interested in joining us this fall, do it immediately because we're at the very end of the recruiting cycle right now. Until next time, we thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this interview as much as we did. And until we see you again, be unbound.